Have you ever noticed how the most powerful people in the room are rarely the loudest? What if I told you that your greatest strength lies not in what you say, but in what you withhold? They've conditioned you to believe that silence means surrender, that stillness indicates weakness. This is perhaps the most dangerous misconception in the game of power. The truth: silence is not the absence of strength. It's the blade you sharpen in darkness, the weapon your opponents never see until it's far. Too late to defend against it. Has this ever happened to you? You're in a meeting or social situation where everyone is desperately trying to prove themselves, talking over each other, revealing their strategies and weaknesses with every word, while the true power player sits back, observes, and reveals nothing. They're not participating in the chaos, they're studying it, cataloguing every vulnerability exposed in that storm of words. When you withdraw from noise and chaos, you're not retreating, you're preparing. The silent warrior understands a fundamental truth that escapes most. True power doesn't announce itself with fanfare and declaration. It strikes without warning, with precision so calculated that recovery becomes impossible for those who never saw it coming. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you navigate your world. Whether in business, relationships, or personal development, this isn't about manipulation, it's about mastery. It's about recognizing that in stillness, your mind becomes an impenetrable fortress, immune to both provocation and flattery. The undistracted mind sees what others miss. While they react, you observe. While they speak, you catalogue their patterns, their tells, their weaknesses. Your silence makes you unreadable, a psychological advantage that creates unease in those accustomed to predictable responses. They can't strategize against what they can't read, can't counter what they can't anticipate. What most mistake for inaction is actually calculated control. The world interprets your quietness as weakness, never realizing that you're not just another piece on the board, you're the one moving the pieces. Every moment of restraint is preparation for the perfect strike, one that comes with such precision that it leaves no warning and no possibility for recovery. Think of the difference between the amateur boxer who telegraphs every punch and the master who reveals nothing until the moment of impact. One is predictable, easily countered. The other is devastatingly effective. What separates those who merely participate in power dynamics from those who control them? The answer lies in understanding that real power operates in silence, and the most consequential moves are often invisible until their effects become undeniable. If you're ready to master the art of silent power, subscribe now and join a community that understands true strength lies beneath the surface. Each video reveals another layer of strategic wisdom most will never discover. This transformation begins with understanding what I call the Machiavellian edge, a fundamental shift in how you perceive power itself. While the masses believe power must announce its presence, true power operates from the shadows. It watches, it studies, it waits. The patient observer maps every weakness, every vulnerability, every hidden desire, while opponents burn themselves out, proving their worth to an audience that has already forgotten them. The hidden truth is that those who genuinely hold power rarely need to declare it. They've mastered the art of seeing without being seen, moving without being noticed, their influence spreading like roots beneath the soil, invisible yet structurally essential. This mindset shift represents the first step in your journey toward true influence. Consider how most navigate social landscapes, constantly fighting for attention, desperately seeking validation, announcing their importance through increasingly loud declarations. But what if I told you there exists a more powerful alternative? Don't fight for attention. Make attention fight for you. Don't argue for your place at the table. Create such undeniable value that they rearrange the room to fit you. This isn't arrogance, but leverage. Cold, calculated leverage that comes from mastering patience and allowing others to reveal themselves while you remain unreadable. When you stop performing for approval, you create a vacuum that others rush to fill. Your silence becomes magnetic, drawing people toward you rather than forcing you to chase after them. Behind the scenes of every interaction lies an exchange of information, most of it unintentional. Every careless word, every petty reaction, every emotional outburst from others provides free intelligence to the patient observer. While they expose their playbooks through emotional reactions, you're collecting data, building a mental dossier on everyone in the room without revealing a single page of your own. This intelligence in the hands of a patient strategist becomes more dangerous than any weapon. You begin to see patterns others miss, anticipate reactions before they happen, and position yourself strategically before others even realize a game is being played. Your decisions take on a new dimension of impact when they're informed by information others don't realize they've given away. The profound revelation here is that most people voluntarily surrender their power through impulsive speech and reactive behavior. They telegraph their next moves, reveal their insecurities, and expose their strategies, all while you observe in calculated silence. This isn't manipulation, it's simply paying attention when others refuse to guard what they freely give away. As you develop this awareness, you'll notice a shift in how others perceive you. The less you reveal, the more they project onto you. The less you react, the more they wonder what you're thinking. Your restraint creates an aura of mystery that commands respect without demanding it. You become the still point around which others orbit, never fully understanding the gravity that holds them there. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how true control operates not through obvious displays of force, but through invisible influence, the kind that others don't even notice until they're already moving in the direction you've chosen for them. Comment below with "I sharpen my power in silence" if you're beginning to see how restraint creates leverage. The essence of true control reveals itself when you understand this fundamental principle. Real power never announces itself with the rattling of chains or the cracking of whips. Those are tools of the amateur, the desperate, the insecure. The masterful strategist weaves invisible threads, connections so subtle, influences so seamless that others follow without feeling led. They move along pathways you've designed while believing they've charted their own course. This revelation transforms your entire approach to influence. The most dangerous and effective form of control is the one they don't notice until escape becomes impossible. By the time they realize a game was being played, you've already secured victory. Your mindset shifts from forcing outcomes to architecting environments where your desired outcomes become inevitable. Consider how differently this operates in practice. The novice demands obedience, issues commands, and creates immediate resistance. But the master plants subtle seeds in fertile minds, ideas so elegantly presented that others nurture them as their own. You water these seeds with suggestion and indirect influence, carefully tending them until they grow into convictions others believe they've cultivated themselves. This isn't manipulation in its crude form. It's psychological architecture. You're not forcing anyone against their will. You're creating spaces where their will naturally aligns with your objectives. The hidden truth here is that people resist being controlled, but embrace ideas they believe they've discovered. Your journey involves becoming invisible as the source, while your influence spreads organically through systems and relationships. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of this transformation comes next. the disciplined removal of emotion from your strategic calculations. This doesn't mean becoming cold or inhuman. Rather, it means developing the rare ability to compartmentalize feelings when making decisions. Anger clouds judgment. Excitement gives you away. Desperation exposes need. Each emotional indulgence creates vulnerability your opponents can exploit. Behind the scenes of every power dynamic, the person with the clearest vision usually prevails. When everyone else is reacting from emotional centers, fear, greed, pride, insecurity, your detachment becomes your greatest asset. Every reaction must serve a purpose, either to conceal your position or advance it. Pure calculation becomes your foundation, not emotional satisfaction. This represents a profound shift in how you navigate complex situations. Most people make decisions based on how they feel in the moment, sacrificing long-term advantage for immediate emotional relief. They respond to provocations because their pride demands it. They reveal their plans prematurely because excitement overrides strategy. They accept unfavorable terms because fear of loss overwhelms rational assessment. By stripping emotion from your calculations, you gain the clarity of pure strategic thinking. This doesn't mean never feeling. It means choosing when and how emotion influences your decisions, rather than being unconsciously driven by it. You develop the ability to pause, assess, and respond with precision rather than impulse. Let's explore how this mental discipline manifests in practical applications where most fail. In the crucial moments when pressure mounts and others reveal everything through their inability to maintain composure. Comment below, "My emotions serve me, I serve nothing," if you're ready to master the art of strategic detachment. Here lies the cornerstone revelation that separates mere participants from genuine players. The man who cannot control himself will never control anything else. This truth echoes throughout history in the rise and fall of empires, corporations, and individuals. When emotions dictate your moves, you've effectively surrendered control to others, allowing their provocations to determine your actions, their approval to shape your decisions, their rejection to alter your course. A disciplined mind creates an entirely different reality. It becomes untouchable, dictating the pace rather than following it, deciding the tone rather than adapting to it, and shaping the battlefield rather than merely fighting on it. This internal mastery represents the ultimate transformation, one that occurs invisibly within before manifesting powerfully without. The journey toward genuine influence begins with this radical commitment. Master yourself first. Develop the rare capacity to listen without immediately reacting, to observe without needing to be seen, to gather intelligence without revealing your own position. This creates a fascinating psychological dynamic, a power vacuum that naturally draws others into your orbit. They sense your gravity without understanding its source. Behind the scenes of every significant negotiation, every pivotal meeting, every crucial interaction, this principle operates with mathematical precision. The one who controls himself controls the room. The one who controls the room controls the outcome. The one who controls the outcome controls the future. Each level of control builds upon the previous, creating a cascade of influence that begins with your own internal discipline. Consider the hidden truth that most overlook. Emotion itself isn't weakness. Uncontrolled emotion is. Strategic displays of calculated emotion can serve your objectives, but only when deployed with precision rather than erupting spontaneously. The master strategist understands when a flash of controlled anger might intimidate, when carefully calibrated warmth might disarm, and when perfect neutrality might unnerve. Your self-mastery creates ripples that influence entire environments. Others feel your presence before you speak, adjust their behavior in anticipation of your assessment, and unconsciously align themselves with your frame rather than imposing theirs upon you. This isn't mystical. It's the natural human response to encountering genuine self-possession in a world of reactivity. What makes this mindset so rare is that it demands something most are unwilling to give, the sacrifice of immediate emotional gratification for long-term strategic advantage. When insulted, the undisciplined person experiences an overwhelming urge to respond in kind, and in that moment of reaction, surrenders control to the provocateur. The disciplined mind recognizes the trap and refuses the bait, maintaining position, while others expose theirs. This level of self-regulation creates a profound asymmetry in every interaction. While others reveal their triggers, weaknesses, and desires through uncontrolled reactions, you maintain the ability to observe without being observed. Your decisions emerge from clarity rather than impulse, strategy rather than emotion, calculation rather than habit. Let me show you how this principle of self-mastery extends beyond personal interactions into something even more powerful: the strategic use of silence as a tool of psychological influence. Comment in one word below, untouchable, if you recognize how self-control creates the foundation of true power. Silence. Most misinterpret it as emptiness, as absence. But in the realm of influence, silence is not empty space. It's a loaded weapon with no safety catch, a psychological pressure point that most people simply cannot handle. When you strategically withhold your voice, something remarkable happens. You force others to hear their own. This creates a tension, a vacuum that human nature compels them to fill. This revelation transforms ordinary interactions into extraordinary opportunities for insight. Watch what happens when you maintain composed silence after asking a question or receiving a half-truth. People rush to fill that space with words, explanations, excuses, and nervous revelations. They confess to the quiet what they'd never volunteer directly. The discomfort of silence becomes your greatest intelligence-gathering tool. Behind the scenes of every negotiation, interview, or confrontation, this dynamic operates with predictable consistency. Most people have never developed the mental discipline to sit comfortably in silence. Their mindset demands resolution, closure, response, and in that desperate need for relief, they surrender information, position, and advantage. Subscribe to continue this journey into the depths of strategic mastery. Those who understand these principles form an elite circle, operating with invisible influence, while others remain trapped in reactivity. Silence shifts power dynamics without announcing itself. It communicates something profound about your psychological positioning, that you're not desperate for approval, not anxious for understanding, not seeking validation. Your comfort with tension tells the room you're secure enough to let others reveal themselves first. And once they do, once they've shown their hand while yours remains hidden, that information asymmetry becomes your leverage. The journey toward mastering strategic silence requires recognizing a fundamental truth. Weak individuals break silence to relieve tension. Strong ones maintain it to let pressure work in their favor. This single mindset shift creates ripple effects throughout your interactions. The less frequently you speak, the more weight your words carry when finally deployed. One carefully chosen sentence after a prolonged silence hits with more impact than an hour of continuous talking. This is how those with genuine authority have always communicated: kings, judges, master negotiators. Their words land with gravity because they're surrounded by purposeful silence. Their statements feel definitive, not because of volume or repetition, but because of the tension that preceded them and the certainty with which they're delivered. Consider the psychological impact when someone responds to you immediately versus when they take a measured pause before speaking. The immediate response suggests reactivity. The pause suggests consideration. One feels impulsive, the other feels authoritative. By controlling the cadence of conversation, by owning the silences between words, you transform how others receive your message. The most profound revelation comes when you realize silence is not merely the absence of sound, but the presence of power. It creates space for observation, assessment, and strategic positioning. While others exhaust themselves with constant expression, you conserve energy, gather intelligence, and strike only when conditions favor you. Let me illuminate how this principle of strategic silence connects to something even more fundamental: the rare discipline of patience as an offensive weapon rather than a passive virtue. Type "silence is my weapon" in the comments if you've recognized how strategic pauses create leverage in your own interactions. Patience, widely misunderstood as passive waiting, stands as perhaps the rarest form of aggression in the arsenal of power. The world misreads it as weakness or indecision because modern culture has become addicted to constant movement, immediate results, and visible action. This fundamental misinterpretation creates extraordinary advantage for those who understand the hidden truth. True patience doesn't drift aimlessly or sleep. It stalks, it watches, it calculates, it waits for precisely the right moment when opponents have exhausted themselves, when they've revealed their vulnerabilities, when they're most susceptible to decisive action. This strategic patience operates like a predator in the wilderness, completely still until the perfect moment of attack. The transformation occurs when you recognize that waiting isn't passive at all, but the most active form of preparation. While others rush forward, spending their energy and revealing their intentions, you conserve strength and maintain position, striking only when success becomes inevitable. At the core of human psychology lies a profound discomfort with stillness. Most individuals harbor a deep-seated fear of inaction. They need to move, to act, to do something, anything, to feel a sense of control over their circumstances. This compulsion creates a fascinating revelation. They mistake mere activity for genuine progress. What they don't realize is that undisciplined action is nothing but wasted energy, noise that reveals your hand before the game truly begins. Watch carefully, and you'll see this pattern everywhere. Impatience exposes intentions, telegraphs fears, and leaks strategy. The person who responds instantly to provocation, who jumps at the first opportunity, who can't maintain strategic silence, they've already surrendered advantage before the real contest even begins. Their journey becomes one of constant reaction rather than calculated action. Behind the scenes of every significant achievement, whether in business, politics, art, or personal development, patience reveals itself not as the absence of action, but as its highest refinement. It represents the rare discipline to reject opportunities that are almost right, almost perfect, almost advantageous. The patient strategist understands something profound. You don't swing at every pitch. You wait for the perfect moment, then strike with such precision that recovery becomes impossible for your opponent. This mindset shift revolutionizes your approach to power dynamics. While waiting, you're not idle. You're studying patterns, cataloging weaknesses, identifying tells that reveal underlying intentions. You're building strength, conserving energy, and positioning yourself for maximum leverage when the moment arrives. Every refusal to act prematurely becomes an investment in eventual victory. Consider the chess master who allows opponents to advance their pieces, seemingly gaining advantage, only to realize too late they've walked into a carefully constructed trap. Or the negotiator who lets the other side talk themselves into a corner before presenting the single solution that serves their own interests. These aren't accidents or luck. They're the inevitable outcome of patient strategy. The revelation that transforms ordinary practitioners into masters is understanding that patience compounds over time. The longer you maintain strategic restraint, the more information you gather, the more options become available, the more leverage you accumulate. When others rush forward driven by emotional impulse, you maintain the freedom of multiple pathways, choosing only when conditions guarantee success. Let me reveal how this principle of strategic patience connects directly to another dimension of power: the ability to become emotionally detached from outcomes while others remain enslaved to their reactions. Write in the comments, "I move when the moment is mine," if you recognize how patience creates inevitable advantage in your own strategic decisions. The profound revelation at the heart of strategic patience is this: impatience invariably forces you into someone else's timing, battlefield, and terms. You surrender control the moment you allow urgency to dictate your actions. The master strategist understands that patience doesn't just avoid this trap, it systematically turns these elements against opponents. While they burn themselves out in constant motion, desperately trying to force outcomes, you conserve strength, gather intelligence, and maintain position. This mindset transformation represents a fundamental shift in how you approach every challenge. You move when conditions favor you, not when emotions demand action. You act from a place of calculated advantage rather than impulsive reaction. The awakening comes when you realize that most people sabotage themselves through their inability to wait, revealing their full strategy, exhausting their resources, and surrendering leverage simply because they lack the discipline to maintain strategic restraint. Behind the scenes of every significant victory lies this hidden truth: the patient strategist doesn't rush. He allows opponents to make moves that ultimately dig their own graves. Like a master chess player, you create situations where others believe they're winning, advancing pieces confidently across the board, never realizing they're moving into positions you've quietly prepared. Their apparent progress becomes the very mechanism of their defeat. When all escapes are finally cut off, your decisive move feels not just effective but inevitable. This approach doesn't just win battles, it prevents them entirely. The most complete victory isn't defeating an opponent. It's creating conditions where they defeat themselves through their own missteps, while you maintain perfect positioning. Your journey toward mastery begins when you recognize that rushing toward resolution almost always weakens your position. History reveals this pattern with remarkable consistency. Those who bide their time with hidden intentions control the tempo of any conflict. Wars have been won before the first arrow was fired simply because one side understood the power of strategic positioning and patient preparation. Empires have fallen not through constant attack, but by allowing enemies to exhaust themselves against seemingly passive resistance, while patient forces preserve strength for the decisive moment. The revelation that separates the amateur from the master is this: the impatient man merely plays the game according to existing rules and boundaries. The patient man designs the game itself, setting conditions, establishing the terrain, determining which moves are even possible before engagement begins. One operates within a framework, the other creates the framework within which others must operate. This distinction represents a complete paradigm shift in your approach to power dynamics. When you control the timing, pace, and conditions of any interaction, you've already established dominance without requiring overt displays of force. Your apparent restraint becomes the very mechanism through which you exercise control. Let me reveal the psychological dimension that underlies all of these strategic principles. How patience creates an unnerving pressure that forces opponents into progressively weaker positions simply through your willingness to wait. Leave a comment saying "Patience is my strategy" if you've recognized how restraint has given you unexpected advantages in your own experiences. The psychological dimension of patience reveals itself in an unexpected way. When properly deployed, your restraint should become actively unnerving to others. This subtle intimidation emerges naturally when your patience is so controlled, so deliberate that it creates cognitive dissonance in those accustomed to predictable reactions. When they expect immediate response and receive calculated stillness, a fascinating transformation occurs. They begin to doubt themselves. Their certainty wavers, their confidence erodes. This psychological pressure builds without you saying a word. When deliberate provocation meets unshakable calm, they question not just their approach, but their fundamental strength. The human mind instinctively reads such composure as evidence of superior position. Your silence becomes tacit proof of advantage they cannot see, but increasingly fear exists. The revelation here is that patience doesn't just avoid mistakes, it actively creates pressure that forces others into them. The hidden truth that separates amateurs from masters is understanding that patience compounds over time, like interest in an investment that grows exponentially rather than linearly. The longer you maintain strategic restraint, the more leverage you accumulate. What begins as small advantage multiplies as opportunities reveal themselves, weaknesses become apparent, and the true landscape of alliances and enmities clarifies before you. This compounding effect transforms your eventual action from mere tactical movement into strategic inevitability. When you finally choose to act, it's not just a strike, but the culmination of a carefully orchestrated sequence, a conclusion they cannot escape because every alternative path was systematically eliminated while they mistook your patience for passivity. Your move becomes not just effective, but inexorable. Behind the scenes of every masterful victory lies this profound understanding. True inevitability emerges when opponents no longer believe they can stop you. They only decide how they will lose. This represents the purest form of power, achieved not through overwhelming force, but through patience that deliberately chokes down ego and resists the constant urge for premature validation that plagues most decision-makers. The journey toward this level of strategic discipline requires something most find nearly impossible: the willingness to remain invisible while positioning, to forego immediate recognition while building advantage, to silence the ego's demand for acknowledgement while the real work happens beneath the surface. This transformation occurs internally first, mastering the impulses that drive most people to act prematurely, before manifesting externally in outcomes that appear almost supernatural to those who don't understand the mechanism. Consider how this principle operates in the highest levels of power. The most dangerous opponent isn't the one who threatens loudly or strikes quickly. It's the one who waits so patiently, positions so carefully, and strikes so decisively that resistance becomes futile before it begins. They don't overcome opposition. They make opposition impossible through perfect positioning, achieved through relentless patience. Let me illuminate how this patience manifests in practical application, how the strategist doesn't merely wait passively, but builds strength in the shadows until the moment of emergence brings not just action, but complete transformation of the landscape. Comment: inevitability is my power. If you recognize how patient positioning creates outcomes others can't prevent once set in motion, this patient approach completely transforms the concept of preparation itself. While waiting for the perfect moment, you're not idly passing time, you're actively building strength in the shadows. When your time finally arrives, you emerge not merely ready, but over-prepared, possessing capabilities and insights others cannot fathom because they've never witnessed your development process. Your decisive move feels inevitable precisely because it's been in motion the entire time, hidden beneath a surface of apparent stillness that concealed constant, deliberate preparation. Nature reveals this principle with perfect clarity. The patient predator doesn't waste energy chasing every potential prey that crosses its path. Instead, it waits, conserves strength, and selects the perfect target, one where success is virtually guaranteed before the pursuit even begins. This strategic selectivity separates masterful hunters from desperate scavengers who must take whatever opportunity presents itself, regardless of risk or cost. The revelation that transforms your entire approach comes from understanding this wilderness wisdom. The wolf doesn't randomly pursue every deer in the herd. It stalks, observes, learns patterns and habits, identifies the vulnerable, and strikes with surgical precision when success becomes mathematically certain. This isn't luck or random chance, but the inevitable outcome of patient observation. The hunter who truly owns his moment inevitably owns the game. Behind the scenes of this patient preparation lies a psychological dimension rarely discussed, but absolutely essential: emotional detachment. True power ultimately belongs to those who can feel nothing when the moment demands complete clarity. Those who can suspend emotional responses that would cloud judgment or compromise strategic position. This detachment isn't the absence of humanity, but rather the presence of supreme control, choosing precisely when, how, and if you feel anything at all. This represents perhaps the most profound transformation in your journey toward mastery. In a world that survives on reaction, where most are perpetually controlled by emotional triggers, provocations, and impulses, the detached strategist becomes virtually untouchable. While others are swept away by currents of feeling, you remain anchored in calculated assessment, unmoved by provocations that would derail less disciplined minds. Consider how this manifests in practice. When insulted, most react instantly with anger or defensiveness. When praised, they become malleable through flattery. When threatened, they either attack impulsively or retreat from fear. Each reaction surrenders control to external stimuli rather than maintaining internal direction. The emotionally detached strategist, however, chooses response based on strategic advantage rather than emotional satisfaction, a discipline so rare it appears almost superhuman to those governed by immediate feelings. The mindset shift that unlocks this capability requires recognizing that emotions themselves aren't weaknesses. Uncontrolled emotions are. Strategic displays of carefully calibrated emotion can serve your objectives, but only when deployed with precision rather than erupting spontaneously. The master knows when a display of controlled anger might intimidate, when calculated warmth might disarm, and when perfect neutrality might unnerve. Let me show you how this emotional detachment creates a psychological barrier around you, one that makes people work harder to reach you, to impress you, to win your approval in ways that invariably strengthen your position. Comment: my emotions are tools, not masters, if you're ready to develop the rare discipline of strategic detachment. Observe the average person, and you'll witness something remarkable. They're not strategic actors, but emotional responders, unwitting puppets whose strings are pulled by whatever feeling dominates the moment. Anger controls their words, forcing responses they later regret. Excitement clouds their judgment, leading to impulsive decisions without proper assessment. Fear dictates their choices, closing doors that should remain open. This emotional reactivity creates a predictable pattern. They move when provoked, speak when baited, and act when emotions demand action, even when every strategic consideration screams that the timing is wrong. This revelation transforms your understanding of human dynamics. Most people don't make decisions. They have decisions made for them by emotional states they never learned to govern. They're not strategists calculating optimal outcomes. They're merely vessels channeling whatever emotional current flows strongest in the moment. Their predictability makes them manipulable by anyone who understands this fundamental weakness. The journey toward genuine power begins with severing these emotional strings. Detachment isn't about becoming cold or inhuman. It's about refusing to be moved by anything that doesn't serve your ultimate objective. It's the discipline to stand perfectly calm while chaos swirls around you, to calculate while others panic, to assess options with crystal clarity while they're blinded by emotional fog. In these critical moments, you alone think clearly, and clarity, more than any other factor, is power. This mindset shift creates an asymmetrical advantage in every interaction. While others are swept away by tides of feeling, defending, attacking, justifying, pleading, you maintain the rare ability to see the situation from above, unaffected by emotional currents that distort perception and compromise judgment. Your decisions emerge from strategic assessment rather than emotional impulse, creating outcomes that appear almost mystically effective to those who don't understand the mechanism. The hidden truth behind this transformation challenges conventional wisdom. The truly dangerous person isn't emotionless, but emotion-controlled. They haven't eliminated feelings, but mastered them so completely that emotions become tools rather than drivers. They can summon or dismiss specific emotional responses based on tactical advantage rather than being governed by whatever feeling happens to arise. The master strategist knows precisely when displayed anger might create leverage, when warmth might disarm resistance, when neutrality might unnerve an opponent expecting reaction. This represents the fundamental difference between rulers and the ruled. Rulers choose what to feel, while the ruled merely react to whatever emotions are triggered in them. Machiavelli understood this principle perfectly when he observed that the prince must balance fear and love without becoming enslaved to either. Detachment creates this balance, allowing you to inspire both loyalty and caution without either becoming a weakness that others can exploit. The evolution of your strategic capabilities accelerates when you recognize that emotional control creates a psychological barrier that others find almost impossible to penetrate. They cannot manipulate someone whose emotional responses are deliberate rather than automatic. They cannot predict reactions when those reactions are chosen rather than triggered. This uncertainty forces them to approach you with caution, to reveal more of themselves while you reveal less, to operate on your terms rather than imposing theirs. Let's examine how this emotional detachment creates unpredictability. When others cannot read your true thoughts or feelings, they cannot anticipate your next move, forcing them into increasingly cautious positions that strengthen your advantage with each interaction. Comment: I control my emotions. They don't control me. If you've recognized how emotional, mastery creates strategic advantage in your own experiences. The power of emotional detachment reveals itself most dramatically in the realm of predictability, or more precisely, your ability to become strategically unpredictable. When others cannot read your emotional state, they find themselves in a position of profound disadvantage. They cannot anticipate your next move with any degree of certainty. The psychological impact is immediate and disorienting. They don't know if you'll retaliate instantly, strike months later when they've forgotten the offense, or do nothing at all because you've deemed the situation strategically irrelevant. This uncertainty creates a fascinating dynamic. They begin to tread carefully around you, measuring words, considering implications, second-guessing assumptions. That heightened awareness, that careful calculation before they speak or act in your presence, that's power. Not the crude power of force or threat, but the refined power of psychological positioning that makes others adjust their behavior without you saying a word. Observe the transformation that occurs in confrontational scenarios. When insulted or challenged, the weak react instantly, defending, justifying, counter-attacking, giving the aggressor exactly what they wanted. Proof that they can be manipulated through emotional triggers. The emotionally detached, however, remain unmoved. They might acknowledge the statement without reacting to it, creating immediate doubt in the mind. Of the aggressor. Did it work? Did they even hear me? Why aren't they responding? That seed of uncertainty is worth more than any comeback. The revelation extends beyond negative interactions. Consider what happens with praise and flattery. Most drop their guard completely when complimented. They feel validated, special, recognized, and in that moment of emotional satisfaction, their strategic awareness diminishes dramatically. The detached strategist, however, accepts praise with the same calm. Equilibrium as insult. They neither rise with compliments nor fall with criticism, maintaining mental clarity and strategic focus regardless of the emotional current flowing around them. Behind the scenes of every powerful position lies this hidden truth. Emotional detachment creates immunity to the most dangerous form of manipulation, emotional leverage. People will inevitably attempt to bind you through guilt, obligation, romance, fear, or flattery. They'll try to make you feel something so intensely that you abandon your own strategic interests to serve theirs. The detached mind acknowledges these feelings without being governed by them. This represents perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the transformation. You can care deeply about someone, yet walk away without hesitation if they threaten your purpose. You can acknowledge an emotional bond while refusing to let it dictate your strategic positioning. You can recognize obligation without becoming enslaved to it. This level of emotional discipline creates a freedom of movement that most will never experience. They remain bound by attachments that control their decisions regardless of cost. The journey toward this mastery begins with developing exceptional self-observation. Every time you feel the impulse to react emotionally, pause and ask, does this serve my objective? If not, you simply do nothing. You let the urge pass through you without acting on it. You let silence do the work that hasty words never could. Comment, detachment is my freedom. If you've recognized how emotional independence creates strategic options unavailable to those controlled by their reactions. The practical development of this emotional detachment begins with rigorous self-observation, a conscious awareness of your own internal landscape. When you feel that familiar urge to react emotionally, pause and ask yourself this single clarifying question. Does this serve my objective? If the answer is no, you simply do nothing. You allow the impulse to pass through you without taking action. You let silence work where hasty words would only weaken your position. This discipline requires practicing what I call emotional minimalism, deliberately reducing how much of your internal state you broadcast to the world. Stop explaining your decisions, justifying your positions, or reacting to every push and pull from your environment. Begin treating your emotional expressions as valuable currency, spending them only when the return justifies the investment. The revelation that transforms your interactions emerges from this restraint. In a world absolutely addicted to overexpression, where people compulsively share every thought, feeling, and reaction, your calculated restraint makes you immediately stand out. Your strategic silence creates a fascinating psychological response in others: curiosity about what you're thinking, caution about how they approach you, and ultimately a deeper respect for your presence. This emotional detachment forms an invisible barrier around you that profoundly alters how others engage with you. They begin working harder for your attention, investing more to gain your approval, and valuing your responses more highly when they receive them. This is the hidden power of scarcity. By making your emotional responses rare, you increase their perceived value exponentially. Your words carry weight precisely because you use them sparingly. Behind the scenes of every powerful dynamic, this principle operates with mathematical precision. Detachment forces others to judge you by your actions rather than your moods or words. When people cannot read your emotional state, they have no choice but to evaluate you based on concrete results and deliberate movements. This puts you firmly in control of the narrative surrounding you. You become known for what you choose to do rather than what you reactively feel. Perhaps the greatest strategic advantage detachment provides is this: it allows you to walk away from anything without hesitation or remorse. A deal, a relationship, an opportunity, a confrontation. You can assess each purely on its strategic merits rather than emotional attachments. This ability to disengage cleanly when conditions no longer favor you makes you essentially ungovernable. While others remain trapped in situations that no longer serve them because of emotional investment, you maintain complete freedom of movement. The mindset shift that unlocks this capability requires recognizing a counterintuitive truth. The less emotionally attached you are to specific outcomes, the more effectively you can pursue them. When you need a particular result for emotional satisfaction, that need creates leverage others can use against you. When you remain equally prepared to advance or withdraw based on strategic assessment rather than emotional investment, you become impossible to manipulate through conventional means. Consider how differently you navigate negotiations when emotionally detached. Most enter with specific emotional needs: to feel respected, to win, to avoid embarrassment that skilled opponents immediately exploit. The detached negotiator wants a favorable outcome, but needs nothing emotionally, creating an asymmetrical advantage that shifts the entire dynamic. Comment: I remain detached from outcomes, if you've realized how emotional non-attachment creates strategic freedom in your decision-making process. Observe the world around you, and you'll notice this fascinating pattern. Most people remain bound by emotional attachments that actively harm their interests. They stay in bad relationships long after the connection has turned toxic. They cling to failing ventures despite mounting evidence of inevitable collapse. They remain loyal to people who consistently exploit them. Why? Because they've made emotional investments they cannot bear to write off, sunk costs that control their decisions regardless of future prospects. This revelation transforms your understanding of freedom itself. True strategic independence begins when you develop the capacity to walk away from anything, regardless of how much you've already invested, the moment it no longer serves your objectives. Detachment doesn't just protect you from manipulation, it forms the essential foundation of patience. You can only wait for the right moment when you're not emotionally invested in immediate results or validation. The journey toward mastery accelerates dramatically when detachment becomes not something you practice, but something you embody. When you reach this state of genuine emotional self-governance, something remarkable happens. Intimidation becomes effortless. Not the crude intimidation of threats or posturing, but the subtle intimidation of complete self-possession. People sense your immunity to influence, your freedom from the emotional levers that control most, and they begin to second-guess themselves before even speaking. This mindset shift creates a profound reversal in power dynamics. You no longer adjust to accommodate others, they adjust to accommodate you. You become the fixed point around which others orbit, the reference by which they measure themselves. Power no longer requires pursuit or acquisition. It naturally gravitates toward you because you've become the most stable element in any environment. This represents perhaps the most counterintuitive aspect of genuine influence. The less you chase it, the more naturally it flows toward you. Behind the scenes of every genuinely powerful position lies this hidden truth. Emotional detachment is the silent crown. Not flashy or loud like the gaudy symbols of authority that fascinate amateurs, but the subtle mark of someone who cannot be broken, baited, or bound by conventional means. It allows you to think with the strategic clarity of a ruler, act with the calculated precision of a master strategist, and strike with the perfect timing of a predator. Once acquired, this capacity cannot be taken from you by external forces. It remains yours, regardless of circumstance. The ultimate transformation begins with stripping away something that drives most people's actions: the need to be seen, to be validated, to be recognized. Instead, you build in private, move in silence, and wait for your perfect moment. When that moment arrives, prepared for through patient positioning and emotional discipline, you take it so completely that future challenges become unthinkable. You enter rooms not seeking acceptance or approval, but radiating calm certainty that commands without words. This invisible influence operates through presence rather than performance. You don't need to announce your power because it's felt before you speak. You don't need to demand respect because your composed self-possession creates it automatically. The space around you becomes an extension of your strategic positioning. Share in the comments, "I build in silence," if you've discovered how working without audience creates advantage that loud performers will never understand. Those who have followed this journey to its conclusion understand something profound. Power doesn't announce itself with noise and spectacle. It reveals itself through disciplined silence, strategic patience, and emotional self-mastery. You've glimpsed the hidden architecture behind genuine influence, not the crude imitations that fascinate amateurs, but the subtle forces that shape environments without visible effort. If these principles resonated with you, if you recognize the strength in silence, the power in patience, the advantage in emotional detachment, I invite you to join this community of strategic thinkers. Subscribe to continue this exploration of hidden principles that most will never understand. Each video uncovers another dimension of mastery that transforms how you navigate every environment. For those who truly grasp these concepts, leave the phrase, "I move in silence," in the comments. It's a signal between those who understand that genuine power operates beneath the surface, unseen until it's already decisive. Your comment identifies you as someone who sees beyond the obvious, who values substance over spectacle. If you found value in these insights, a simple like creates ripples that extend these ideas to others ready to receive them. Not for validation, but for strategic expansion of this philosophy to those prepared to implement it. There's a video right here that explores the next dimension of strategic mastery: how to read others while remaining unreadable yourself. Click and continue this journey of transformation with me there, where we'll explore the invisible language that reveals everything others try to conceal.